Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again. Okay, thanks for tuning back in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents Beyond the Realm. I am your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur. Okay. Yes, Silent D, I'm live now. You know how they lie? I sent the Empress an email about the time shortly after she posted it. Thank you, beloved. Screen still black. The screen is black. ScrewTube even messed with the time on this broadcast. Yeah, this is what they do. This is what they do. Okay. Y'all see how they do? The chat says live in 11 hours. The live is set to 11 p.m. That's what they do. That is what they do, people. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and get into it. And I will be talking to them about this in the chats after this broadcast. Okay? And thank you all for screenshotting and getting all the information when they do these things. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is a story. Okay, I don't know if you all saw the Netflix movie. It was called Veronica. But this is, and it was based on a true story. This is the true story that inspired that movie, Veronica. Okay. Okay, so anyway, this is not the case. Hold on, let me start off right here. Okay. Now it says, it's not uncommon among the horror genre of movies to begin with the caption stating the movie is based on a true story. But most horror movies use this to create a sense of unease before the movie even starts. It's one thing to watch a movie and assure yourself that it's not real, but when it is real, that's pretty scary. But fortunately, most of these movies, while technically based on real events, are excessively hammed up for the camera. Usually, what happens is the real story is something mundane but still unsettling, and the writers simply add a much more spectacular supernatural events or element. There are always exceptions that are based on more seemingly supernatural events, such as the Warrens cases. But usually the real life events movies are based upon significantly less frightening movies or less frightening episodes than the movie itself. So basically, they're saying that a lot of these movies that say they're based on a true story, the directors and writers actually add up stuff, add things into it to make it more sensational. But in the case of the Warrens, those were accurate, okay? I remember I've done numerous stories on them. The Amityville Horror, true story, the one about the Conjuring, the one about the doll Annabelle. Those stories were not actually hammed up. They say those are very strange supernatural cases, but they do often. We all know that. Let me give you an example. The movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? And they say it's based on a true story. Now, when you first hear that this is based on a true story, you're thinking, was there really a crazed family of killers out there in the woods, dismembering and killing people? Well, that's not what happened. They actually based it off of a serial killer by the name of Ed Gein. Ed Gein was a serial killer in Wisconsin, and he in Plainsfield, Wisconsin, and he killed his mother, his mother died, and he kept her body in the house. He didn't kill her, she actually died, and he kept her body in the house because he was obsessed with her. That's where they got the movie Psycho with about Norman Bates. That's where they got that movie from as well. But the reason they say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story is because they took certain elements of that movie from Ed Gein's story. The fact that he, took the skin off of his victims, because he went on to kill like 3 people after his mother died, and he removed their skin and made face masks out of it. That's where they get the character Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's where they get the character Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, from the fact that he did those things. So sometimes based on isn't actually factual, okay? But this story that I'm about to tell you actually is. And I've always known for years that these things aren't, some of them aren't actually, up to par or actually giving a lot of the truth, and they actually just add things to it. That's why the stories that I do that are based on true stories and they have been made into movies, I always make sure that the events shown and depicted in the movie is actually what happens. Just so you know, okay? So let me put my glasses back on because this light is really blinding. Okay, so it's not, okay, I read all that part already. So it says, this is not the case with what is referred to as the Villegas case, a real life story about a young girl named Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro, who lived in Madrid, Spain. Now, her story was the foundation for the movie Veronica, which, like many others, came with the caption, based on a true story. But the difference here is that the real life story was significantly even more frightening than the movie itself. It was based upon a police report, which remains the only time that an official police report was ever documented as paranormal. Now, in the late summer of 1991, 18-year-old Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro died after going into a coma in the hospital. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong with her, despite a string of hospital visits over the previous year and many problems at home. Now, unable to find the cause of death, they wrote in her medical records that her death was sudden and suspicious. The biggest problem in this story was not, however, the girl's death, but the events that led up to it and what followed after. So in March of 1990, Estefania went to school on an ordinary day, just like any other teen girl. Partway through the day, she and a group of her friends decided they wanted to play with a Ouija board. And one of her friends had in fact brought it to school and snuck it in. Now, Estefania's sister, Maria Nela, was allegedly part of the group as well, but she didn't participate in the game, however. Instead, she was tasked with guarding the door so that other students or teachers would not walk in while the group tried to contact spirits. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary, but they did end up getting caught by a teacher who burst into the room and snatched the board away from them. In doing so, the glass the group had been using in place of a planchette shattered. According to everyone in the group, as well as Maria Nela and the teacher, smoke came from the glass, and Estefania unintentionally inhaled it. Now, I want to tell y'all where things went wrong here. Let me tell y'all where things went wrong here. If you know anything about Ouija boards, then you know that if you're playing them, which you shouldn't be, as far as I'm concerned, but if you're playing them and you have your hands on the planchettes, or some people call it an oracle, if you have your hands on that, you're not supposed to leave the board without saying goodbye. Saying goodbye to the spirit. Because the spirits can leave the board. So by the fact that the teacher walked in and saw them playing it and snatched the board from them and the glass planchette broke, that smoke that came from it, that was the demon. Okay? That's what that was. Millie says, who creates them, Queen? Anyone can create them. You know, Milton Bradley, I believe, they make them. They sell them in stores. But some people actually make them themselves, like it's what they did. See, they had one that was like what they call a makeshift board. They literally made it themselves. And they're very easy to make. Like, you can make them practically with anything, although I don't advise it. But that's what they had done. They had made one themselves, and that's why they had a glass using that as the planchette, because actually there's one that comes with the board. It's shaped like a triangle, and it has a little clear piece of plastic in the middle of it at the bottom so that you can read the letters or whatever. Okay? So anyway, they say Estefania unintentionally inhaled the smoke. Now, those around Estefania say that the changes in her after the incident with the Ouija board were marked and immediate. Though they did not start off small, they escalated. Though they did start off small, they escalated very quickly. Now, she started changing. She started changing because she was possessed by this demon that came from that board. And let me tell you something. As I told you before on this channel, you have to have a contract with the demon. You have to give the demon possession or permission to take possession of you. Now, you don't have to say the words. You just have to do things, engage in activities that allow them to have the permission to harass you. It's like when they say, you know, a vampire can't enter people's homes. They say this in movies. Vampires can't enter the home unless someone invites them in. Well, demons can't enter your body unless you invite them in. And the way you invite them in, as I've told you many times before, is by engaging in things that are abominations to God, you know, like being a pedophile, engaging in incest, being addicted to porn, and engaging in weird sexual acts, consuming large amounts of alcohol and drugs, abusing alcohol and drugs, basically, and engaging in things that are occult practices, like playing with Ouija boards, seances, trying to conjure spirits, engaging in black magic. Those things are how you can invite them in. You're giving them the okay, because now you have entered into their realm, which is beyond the realm, hence the name of the show. Okay, so with that all being said, they say the incident started off small, but they escalated quickly. It started by deeply affecting her sleep patterns. She struggled with insomnia frequently, and whenever she could sleep, she was plagued by horrible nightmares of shadowy creatures calling to her. Let me tell you something. They absolutely will plague your sleep patterns, because that's the way of breaking you down mentally so they can fully take over you. You see, sleep deprivation makes you mentally and physically weak. And that's how the demons just take over. So most of the time, she didn't even need to be asleep for these experiences to happen, because her family said that she told them that she could see shadows following her around in the corners of the room, down the hall, whispering to her, asking her to come with them. She would even fall into frequent trances that usually lasted 15 to 20 minutes, according to her mother, Concepcion Gutierrez. That was her mom. Now, when she came out of these states, she would say that she was in a long corridor filled with fog, and that the voices that she was always hearing reached her in these trances as well. Concepcion and Estefania's father, Maximo Gutierrez, took Estefania to the hospital several times prior to her death, to no avail. She saw countless different specialists at 4 different medical centers, but each time she went, the doctors found nothing wrong with her, despite doing all manner of tests and scans. Now, the symptoms began to get worse with each passing day. Objects in the apartments would move around and turn themselves on and off. Unseen forces became violent, not only towards Estefania, but also to her family members. Her younger siblings would wake up with their arms being slammed into the walls. The family dog was thrown across the room. As far as I'm aware, he was okay afterward. But one of her little sisters was even shoved on at least one occasion. Her sister, Maria Nella, was who Estefania shared the room with, even claimed to have woke up one night to find Estefania levitating slightly above her bed. After a while, Estefania even began to attack her siblings herself. She became irritable and aggressive and would growl and bark at her younger brother. And on one occasion, she allegedly attacked her sister and injured the girl so badly that she ended up on the floor, foaming at the mouth. What's worse still is that Estefania wasn't the only one seeing these things and experiencing these things. Now, while she was clearly the main target, her parents and siblings also experienced things moving around on their own, doors slamming and locking themselves, and they all even saw the shadow creatures moving around. In one instance, Estefania went to do some chores in the bathroom, which later became known as the epicenter of all the paranormal activity in the apartment. And a silhouette appeared and the iron turned itself on. The family allegedly used the bathroom for a few different things besides its intended purpose. Now, Estefania screamed, and her mother went to check on her, at which point the door locked behind them. Maximo had to come help them get out. That's the father. And even then, it was only when he was about to literally kick the door down that it casually opened all by itself with ease. Now, in addition, most guests and neighbors that came to the apartment also collected various experiences of their own with the phenomena occurring within the Gutierrez home. The final nail in the coffin for Estefania was when she started having seizures. They began relatively early on and grew worse as time progressed. By the last few nights before she died, they became more severe. Then one night, she suffered such a powerful seizure that she slipped into a coma from which she never awoke. She passed away a few hours later, and as mentioned before, the doctors couldn't find an explanation for her death. Now, unfortunately for the Gutierrez family, all of these terrifying activity did not end with the death of their daughter. While it does seem that all of the activity began with Estefania and the Ouija board, evidently, whatever malevolent forces had been let in were now there to stay. In fact, after Estefania's death, things got worse. Concepcion reported hearing Estefania screaming from all sections of the apartment, all hours of the day, and there was near constant banging on the walls. Objects continued to move around the apartment on their own, and appliances still turned on by themselves. They turned off and on at will. She also often heard glass breaking and an old man's menacing laughter, and doors continued to slam on their own. Estefania's siblings also continued to get woken up and hurt by whatever was in the home. On a practically unsettling occasion,